Let's talk about this building, 8 Spruce. It's up. I guess you're going to be signing leases very soon if you haven't started already.
We have started.
You've started. Wasn't that easy to get it to this height? Would it be easier today?
It would be more difficult today.
More
difficult today. You know, when you build, you have to get financing, and we got financing for this building in March of 2008, and that was kind of the last big building to get financed. Probably maybe in the country, but certainly in the city. Today, you can't get financing for a building of this size. It's a large loan, and that kind of financing is not available. So that part would be harder. What would be easier? The cost would be less because construction costs have come down somewhat significantly in the city. And most importantly, when we were building this building, we went through a god-awful recession called the Great Recession. At one point, we thought maybe we'd have to cut the building back, that we could never really build this whole building. Today, the economy really is on the rise. So from an economic standpoint and a market standpoint, it came on at a perfect time. If you're going to build it today, you do very well when it was finished.
Right. The rental market has really bounced back in this town. So your building is here, as you point out, at the right time. But given the fact that rental demand is there and appears to be there for the foreseeable future, why is it that banks are so reluctant to finance a structure like this?
It's really what happened in the Great Recession was that banks got hurt, in real estate in a dramatic kind of way, pretty much in every area. And so it's really just, banks' reaction is to hold credit back, to be more careful. And so this is a large loan here. Now for a smaller loan, there'd be capital available. But 6 banks got together to finance this. Each bank doing approximately 1/6 of the financing. That would be very hard to do today. There are not that many banks lending for real estate projects of any size. They are more interested in lending, but I would say in the up to $100 million range. I think would be very hard. This loan exceeds $500 million, and I think that would be almost impossible to put together today.
And of the banks that we know, are any of them more willing to extend credit? Do you look at, clearly some of them are in different stages of recovery. Does a JP Morgan, by virtue of the fact that it's standing firm and seems to have gotten through its issues faster than others, mean it's more willing to extend credit to someone like you?
Well, let me say the first thing. This was financed by 6 banks. I think 5 of the 6, maybe 6 of the 6 were foreign banks. So even in 2008 or 2007, most of your large real estate lending was done by not domestic banks. European banks. So therefore, when you say JP Morgan or some of the others, the answer is not really. They didn't lend in 2007-06 generally for projects of this kind of size, or they participated to some extent. But really, I don't think you would find European banks or domestic banks that would be willing to lend on a large project, let alone this one. This would be a great one to lend on, of all of them. I just don't think they're making loans as large as this anymore.
So what does that mean, really, for the state of infrastructure in a town like New York City, and frankly, for a country like America? Every city, every country needs to renew, effectively, its physical plant. If the European banks, which we know are in trouble, aren't there, if the American banks didn't have that much interest to begin with and still aren't there, who's going to fund development?
I think the answer is large-scale projects are not getting done, and I think for the foreseeable will not get done. So you have a city like New York where there is a need, I still think, or will be a need for office space soon. There is a need for rental residential, and there is no lending really to speak of any size, of large size.
When you say foreseeable future, how far into the future are you looking?
I would say a loan of this size, I almost couldn't predict. I'd say it could be 5 or 6 years.
You mentioned that at some point the city is going to need more office space. Where? Because if I look in downtown Lower Manhattan, I see a tower going up just over my left shoulder here, and that's going to be providing this town with a lot of new office space. The buildings going up next to it are. We've already got the new Goldman building. They moved out of 85 Broad. You've got the Silverstein building that went up where number 7 World Trade Center was. Who's going to need more office space than that?
So that's a very good question. My business, and basically the business of development, particularly office development and residential, is dependent on job creation. So the question is, what kind of job creation will we have in the city? So we got 50,000 additional jobs last year. We only lost 150,000 in recession, so we're only 100,000 down from where we were. We have about a 10% vacancy rate in our office supply now. That's a number, we do a lot of office in our company. 10% is a situation where the landlord and tenant have about equal borrowing power. If it gets to 7 and 8%, which would be somewhere in the neighborhood, 2%, 3% greater occupancy, you will have a situation like you had in '07, where you'll have a tremendous shortage of space. I would say if this city continues the way it's been growing, I would say in 3 or 4 years, despite the stuff that's being done at the World Trade Center area, you're going to have a need for office space.
Bank financing, even if it's only available at amounts of $100 million, what kind of terms are banks asking of developers now? And how do they compare to, say, what we saw in 2007, 2006?
Well, we're primarily, when you build, you have to get a construction loan. So what you're usually talking about is a spread between some number, like the LIBOR rate or some rate. The spreads have gone up significantly. They've gone from maybe 150 basis points, 1.5%, to 2.5 or 3% above LIBOR. The beauty of it is LIBOR is very, very low. A 30-day LIBOR is less than 0.5%. So the all-in rate is probably lower than we paid, say, 4 years ago. The spreads are significantly more. In addition, the amount that a bank will give you, maybe they'd give us 70% on a construction loan of the cost of the building. Today, my guess is it's 60%. So you're going to get less proceeds, a higher spread, but the overall rate today is likely to be about the same.